Living with a mental illness is an extreme obstacle for people to overcome. Being diagnosed with a mental illness can be a difficult thing to handle, and everyday life can be proven even more difficult. Throughout the year, we have discussed in detail several accounts of people who have one of many different mental illnesses, and many of these people have not let it keep them down. They have overcome the effects the illness has on them, as well as the stigmas placed upon them by society. The accomplishments of people who have to deal with these hardships are extraordinary. The people whom we have studied, as well as others, have flourished in their lives and have found many coping mechanisms to help them do this. Dr. Kay Redfield Jamison is one of the people we most recently studied. She was diagnosed with manic depressive illness, otherwise known as bipolar disorder, as a young adult. Even while struggling with this illness, she became a professor of psychology at UCLA and began studying illnesses like her own. As her career progressed, she was later offered a position to be a professor of psychiatry at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. In her book about her mental illness, An Unquiet Mind, she once said, "We all build internal sea walls to keep at bay the sadness of life and the often overwhelming forces within our minds. In whatever way we do this, through love, work, family, faith, friends, denial, alcohol, drugs, or medication, we build these walls, stone by stone, over a lifetime." These are all ways people who are given hardships in their lives, such as a mental illness, can cope with it. They are the ways in which people can overcome the mental illness and flourish in their lives. Dr. Jamison took lithium and received psychotherapy, but it was shown that she also coped in many other ways. Her work and her research has always been a way for her to cope. These little bright spots can help to make the illness more bearable. She took pride in helping others and finding out more about her condition. Although difficult for her, Dr. Jamison used reading as a way to cope as well. In one interview, she talked about how she was studying the poems of Robert Lowell.
So I'm working on a book about the poet Robert Lowell at the moment, and almost every minute, there are frustrating moments, but almost every minute I'm just amazed at the interaction of character and bad disease and what people do with it. And here's somebody who was hospitalized 20 times for severe mania, and each time came back, put his life together, and wrote some of the most brilliant poetry of the 20th century. And I feel very lucky for that.
Robert Lowell was one of the many who flourished through his mental illness. He struggled with manic depressive illness and was hospitalized for it in 1954, shortly after the death of his mother. He found comfort in writing about his childhood and immersing himself in the things going on politically in the world, both of which he wrote poems about. The poems he wrote during the time not only helped him to cope with his illness, but also showed how even though he had a mental illness, it could not stop him from living his life and doing what he loved. He flourished in his life even after being hospitalized for manic depressive illness, and his accomplishments are extraordinary. Another example of a person who has not let their mental illness keep them down is the character Pat from the movie Silver Linings Playbook. Although fictitious, it is an accurate example of how people diagnosed with a mental illness can find pleasure in little things that can help them cope with the illness. For Pat, he started by focusing on his health and exercising often and eating healthy. As the movie progressed, he began a dance program with a girl he met. He talks about dancing once during the movie and says, "It's good for me, Dad. It's making me disciplined and focused, and I never would have thought this, but it's a good thing." He used these things to flourish through his mental illness and be able to live a normal life.
When the winds hit heavy on the borderline, please say hello.
The famous comedian Drew Carey is another person who struggles with a mental illness. Throughout his whole life, depression has had a huge impact on him. His father died at a young age, which only left him feeling alone throughout his childhood and deepened his feeling of depression. Many times, he would not be able to appreciate anything from small to big and would frequently curse the world and put it to blame for all that had happened to him. Now, Carey is finding ways to function in daily life and appreciate life. He has found different things to focus on to help him through this.
I'm the way I am now because of actions I've taken and, advice I got, and surrounding myself with positive thinking people and positive environments, And I honestly, I do see a therapist now, and I'm glad I do. If you think it's weak to have somebody see a counselor or to somebody get help for a problem, you're living in the 50s. Seriously. You check your watch.
Great day to Isn't it great being alive?
Even through the depression, he was able to live his life to the fullest. After finding ways to cope with the illness, such as writing comedy stand-up scripts, reading books, and surrounding himself with positive people, he was able to become extremely successful. He started by doing stand-up comedy and then transitioned into his own sitcom. He then went on to host the game show The Price is Right. Even through his illness, he found a way to live life to the fullest and not let it keep him down. In class this year, we had the opportunity to listen to two people from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, speak about their mental illness. The man who came to talk to us suffered from schizophrenia and originally had a hard time coping with it. He began using drugs and alcohol at a young age until he realized what really helped him the most. He talked to us about how the most important thing to him was having a routine and eating hearty meals every day. These two things are what helped him to cope with his illness. He was able to live daily life after he figured out which coping mechanisms worked for him. He did not let his mental illness control his life. These people and many others have found ways to cope with their mental illness and not let it overcome them. Whether it be through a routine, a form of art, or a passion, these things have allowed them to overcome the hardships brought onto them by their illness and excel in their lives. These lives can bring inspiration to those struggling with a mental illness. The accomplishments of these people show that through therapy, medication, and a few coping mechanisms, it is possible to live a fulfilling life.